Hello, team, and welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video for the 14th of May 2023. This is a Ukraine war news video, and let's get straight to the frontline stats or the general staff figures for the Russian losses for the day before. All the usual caveats apply. 620 liquidated personnel, which is there or thereabouts, 5 tanks, 18 APCs. That's insane. 21 artillery systems, 1 MLRS. 31 drones, 7 vehicles and fuel tanks, 2 pieces of special equipment. There's some huge numbers posted in there. 18 APCs and 21 artillery systems. Now, there was a huge number of artillery systems yesterday. 27, I think it was. What's going on? Well, some people are claiming that as the Ukrainians are overrunning certain positions, particularly around Bakhmut, they are actually getting hold of a bunch of self-propelled mortars, and that would explain at least some of those, rather than these being artillery pieces that have been targeted by counter-battery fire or something like that and taken out. That will be happening as well, of course, up and down the front line. Kherson is an area that they've been trying to do that, as far as I can work out. But I think a lot of these figures are going to be coming from the Bakhmut area and the localized counterattacks that are taking place there. 18 APCs is another huge number, though. These are pretty unsustainable figures in that area. I've seen some first-person view drone footage of a number of APCs being taken out, lots of different bits and pieces taken out. 2 pieces of special equipment, that could be any number of different things, from electronic warfare to excavators to deminers, so on and so forth. So not sure what that is. Okay, let's go on and look to what has happened overnight. 18 Shahed drones were shot down. Additionally, 6 recon drones, Lancet kamikaze drone, and 3 cruise missiles were down. Pretty active skies last night over Ukraine. As you can see from lots of different reports, there were S-300s used against Kharkiv, I think, as well. As far as I can tell, some Russians are claiming a tank factory in Kharkiv was hit, or at least targeted. I'm not sure of the details of that. Here are a few bits of FPV drone footage, just to give you an idea of the sort of thing that takes place. This is an intelligence complex of the Russians with the help of the kamikaze drone. Similar complex is located on the opposite bank of the reservoir. So this is around Zaporizhia, near the Enerhodar nuclear power plant. That's the reservoir we're talking about. Contain high multiplicity cameras, means of radio, electronic intelligence, and electronic warfare. So you can see this is like a building, if you like, or a structure at least, with a whole bunch of different bits of kit on top. You can see as it comes in here. So this will be listed under special equipment, and there, takes out that. Don't know quite what that is they've hit, but that's the general sense. And then loads of FPV drones doing stuff like this, hitting. In this case, it's a truck, so affecting logistics. But I've seen APCs and all sorts taken out. These FPV drones are being particularly useful for the Ukrainians at the moment, and we have seen literally hundreds of these stacked up. People are now doing commentary about, FPV launching munitions have absolutely presented new opportunities for hitting targets behind enemy lines, especially as they're able to conduct their own reconnaissance during a strike mission. They're now the new snipers, if you like. So these are becoming really, really effective for the Ukrainians. The Russians have their Lancets, but I just think the numbers of these FPV drones, when you literally see rooms with 200 of these stacked up, and then they're just attaching RPG-7 warheads to them, etc., then you realize that, hey, this is a different style of war than the Ukrainians were conducting a year ago. Okay, says Konstantin, I wrote about a Russian attack around Svatova. Russian tanks, after eating a mine, were destroyed. A Russian's tank was destroyed. 7 Russian soldiers was destroyed by artillery, and the rest scattered in the tree lines and started hugging. Ukrainian drones attacked the tree line and finished the job. 12 additional soldiers were removed from Ukraine. Here's a video of that kind of stuff happening, or them hugging, as it says there. Now, this is just trying to put meat on the bone of how you get to these figures. Here, you've got one attack in Svatova, apparently causing the death of 19 Russian soldiers. And a tank as well. So, it's trying to justify whether, or trying to evaluate whether these figures are justifiable that the general staff put out. Right, what's been going on around Bakhmut? Just really quickly, they've been counter-attacking still north and south. I think it's quite tough in the center, though, still for the Ukrainians. Ukrainian counterattacks in the Bakhmut area have continued, and geolocated footage confirms that gains have been made. Ukraine has unblocked the Kromova road and is continuing forward. In the south, Russians have been pushed further back from Ivaniska. In the Klishchivka area, things are starting to get difficult for the Russians. They still most likely hold parts of the forest southwest of Ivanivska, but the ability to supply it's getting continuously weaker. It's unclear if they have any presence left west of the canal. If the Ukrainians are able to cross a canal near the supply line, the spearhead lurking in the forest will likely fall. So that's this area there. As the Russians are forced to either retreat or face encirclement, this would mean the last potential threat to the road T0504 would be eliminated. So you've got this road in here, and the Russians are being pushed back further and further back. However, in the center, well, I mean, the whole point of this road is to supply the center, which is not really the center; it's just the western outskirts. So, yeah, you can free this road, but what are you doing in the middle? Ukrainians have made more gains in 2 days than Russians have made in many weeks. However, these are still local and tactical successes, and the general situation has not changed significantly. No villages have been liberated, and the Ukrainians must fight for every field. There was talk about Klishchivka falling to the Ukrainians. I don't know that that's actually happened, but they will be knocking on its door. These are most likely probing attacks as Ukraine is shaping the battlefield for future operations and the front lines in the rear. Larger operations will follow. There you go. So that's kind of what's happening there. Ukraine may have killed 3 Russian colonels and seriously wounded a 4th one in South Bakhmut in Klishchivka, as I was mentioning that place. Not verified. Don't know. Take that with a pinch of salt. The report mentions the Russians' 4th separate motorized rifle brigade, but to my knowledge, this brigade is deployed in North Bakhmut unless there's been a change. So there are lots of rumors, indeed rumors going around that Klishchivka was liberated. That kind of action might have taken place, but it might be in the very early stages. It might not have happened at all. There's loads of rumors flying around at the moment. Right, I'm going to move on to what I reported. I did a whole video on this yesterday, but in case you didn't see it, the Russians had their worst day in the air for a very, very long time. Maybe since the Second World War, who knows? They lost 4 aircraft, 2 Mi-8s, and these were special Mi-8s that are electronic warfare jamming Mi-8s, really expensive. There's only 20 of them, I think, in existence. 2 of them were taken out, and then 2 jets. What were they? Is it Su-34 and Su-25, I think. So anyway, I did a whole video on this. There's some video footage on certainly the helicopters getting taken down and then falling to the ground. All the crew from all 4 aircraft died. They have this took place within Russia. All of these were lost in Russia. And remember, the day before that, one was shot down near Jankoy in Crimea. So another helicopter. So they lost 5 in 2 days. There's lots of theorizing as to what took out these aircraft. And it appears to me that the most likely explanation is the Russians' own air defense. That's what a lot of people are saying. But there are people like Igor Girkin that come along and said, actually, no, I think it was manpads that took them down from saboteur groups within Russia. But actually, there have been counterclaims then saying that that's unlikely given the so here, full nonsense. Judging by the video with 1 Mi-8, it was clearly hit by missile, much more powerful than any manpads. In the video with the falling Su-34, we also see that the aircraft has lost almost the entire nose. It's also significant that none of the crew survived, and also the altitude of the missile. So when you look at, I think it's this one, the missile is coming from on a level with the helicopter, and that is quite significant, rather than a manpad that sort of comes from underneath or shot from below. These appear to be coming from the air more so, and that would lead one to believe it might well be air defense or air-to-air missiles. So loads of different theories flying around, but it's just a very bad day for the Russians in the air. Okay, now the Storm Shadow missile that hit Luhansk supposedly, was it Storm Shadow? There are bits and pieces have now been put on the socials to suggest it was a Storm Shadow. I don't know enough about the missile to know whether these are pieces of Storm Shadow, but the claims are that these are the remains of the Storm Shadow, and so that's a could well be that the Storm Shadow was used to hit Luhansk, and that is significant because they were only announced the day before. Now, yesterday, this was from the day before. This is Khmelnytsky, and I told you about this. There's reportedly an ammunition dump being destroyed. I would say it's more likely that this is fuel. It looks very much like fuel exploding and not ammunition cooking off. I don't know enough about the logistics to suggest whether fuel would be a better loss for the Ukrainians than ammunition depots, but certainly looks like fuel to me. Dark oil, I don't know. You guys can probably let me know with those with expertise in this, but that certainly to me looks like fuel. Now, that happened, and as Michael Clarke says here, he's a really good analyst. Looks like someone saying that well, he's saying it's a bad day for the Ukrainians. This was 2 days ago. War's full of setbacks, and this is obviously a blow for Ukraine. So far, Russian intelligence has been poor on Ukrainian stockpiles and still can't hit moving targets very well. But long-range missile battle is about to begin, both probing for big targets. Buckle up and good luck, Kyiv. So yeah, it looks like that is fuel, not explosives. There's no burn-offs or fireworks, but lots of black carbon-based smoke. Now, then yesterday, right, we had the Eurovision. So I'm going to talk a little bit about Eurovision. It was a resounding success for the UK and Ukraine in terms of organisation, production, editing. Really good show. British came second to bottom, which is a shame. Our song was really good song. But it turns out that most of Europe still, I mean, they're all like, you've done such a good job of hosting this. We're going to give you 0 points. I don't think Britain are particularly popular at the moment. I think we did particularly well last year because of this guy was massive on TikTok and got the public vote. But in general, even when we produce a good song, UK just doesn't get the votes. We're not in the in groups of different like groups of countries in Europe. So hey ho, there's that. But and Ukraine did fairly well. They came 6th. Now, I mean, this is to me an example of terrorism. So Russia hit Ternopil at the point where they were just coming on stage. And why is Ternopil important? Ternopil was where the group was from, where these two guys were from, right? I think where they met and where they do their stuff. So the Ukrainian Eurovision Song Contest candidates, if you like, or performers, were just going on stage. Ternopil was hit. It seems really coincidental. I don't know. So I think that was, and that last year during the Eurovision, they were also doing funky stuff around the Eurovision Song Contest as well. The Russians. So they are big on doing symbolic things. I'm fairly sure that those are connected. So Ternopil, there's some massive explosions there by the looks of it. There have also been a number of pieces of video footage like this one. This is the one that the Russians are throwing around loads. This is actually from Iran. Previously, that is not from Ternopil. So if you see a video that looks like this, it is not Ternopil. That is Iran. However, I'm pretty sure that is from Ternopil. Haven't seen stuff coming out since then, so I don't know. Here is some footage that's just coming out now. I've now full details of Russia's attacks on Ternopil, says Tim White. The region is west of Ukraine, has hardly been attacked at all in the whole war, and yet on the night of Eurovision 2023, it was hit twice, hours apart. In the first, 2 people were injured after strikes in the industrial zone. The mayor of Turnip says 2 storage warehouses were hit. One contained polymers, the other household appliances. At 5 a.m. local time, cruise missiles hit. Miraculously, no injuries. 2 daches were destroyed, 12 more damaged, along with an office, warehouse, and various vehicles. So Turnip was really properly hit. And if you understand where Turnip is, I mean, this is like Khmelnytsky yesterday, is a long way back into the west of Ukraine. So Ternopil's there, Khmelnytsky is there, and those are the 2 places that were hit big time in the last 48 hours. So there is something to be said about the ability for the Russians to still get their munitions right across Ukraine and into the western reaches of the country. So that was a really big hit last night. That caused a stir on the news for sure. In going across to Russia, in the center of Moscow, Intercontinental Hotel was on fire yesterday. Another big fire, but not as big as this one. So this was huge news yesterday. This was the Lada factory in Tolyatti. It was on fire, and this was a big old fire. Indeed, there is footage of people inside the factory. Sort of trying to escape as they realize a fire is taking place. And we have further videos here. So this is, as you can see, significant fire. So basically, there was a huge, huge factory square meterage that burnt down, roofs collapsing, all that kind of stuff. This is I think, a significant manufacturing facility for Russia, and that is, I mean, yes, for Ladas, but which is a car manufacturer. But again, stuff like this is just going to economically really hurt Russia if it's happening as often as it appears to be happening. So that is, again, a significant Russia on fire incident. Okay, on to other bits and pieces. This is Pregosian saying, well, but he's essentially very close to inciting the Russian conventional soldiers into some kind of revolt, into some kind of mutiny. He's really skating on thin ice, Pregosian. And as I explained the other day, it could be because he is Putin's only chance. The reason that he's still there and not fallen out of a window is because he's Putin's only chance of executing this war in a manner that Putin would like, rather than having generals who might be influenced by the elites and might look to trying to wrap up the whole war type thing. So Pregosian, who's like flying off the handle against everyone, appears to be saying things that are incredibly controversial, but he's still there doing that. So he must offer some kind of utility to Putin at least. Here, Tim White says, while chaos ensues elsewhere, Wagner owner Pregosian seems to be inciting Russians' regular army to revolt, acting more and more like a diva. In his latest recording, he said, in this brainless war, the only saint and absolutely innocent in all problems is a Russian soldier. And he said all sorts of other things, in fact, since this came out. So there are some recordings of him being, really quite risky, it has to be said. Right, on to military aid. The US has secretly been supplying Ukraine with ADM-160 MALD decoy cruise missiles. I talked to you about this in the aftermath of the Luhansk Storm Shadow missile hitting. There were not only did the Storm Shadow do the damage it apparently did, and if we can trust it was a Storm Shadow, but regardless of what it was, there were decoy missile remnants found around, which are sent off either before or alongside the main munition that you are firing to attract air defense systems to fire at the decoys, so that uses up the air defense missiles, and then the real one gets through and does its damage. Right, these haven't been announced by the Americans at all, so they just give you some information. ADM-160 has a range of 920 kilometers, a speed of 0.191 Mach, so 0.9 times the speed of sound, and is powered by a turbojet engine. It's a good sign because it shows US secretly supplies Ukraine by sending more than is publicly disclosed. This is a very important point here. that if these are turning up and basically they can only come from the States, and interestingly, they also would need to be adapted to Ukrainian frames, then there's significant stuff going to Ukraine that we don't know about and is being adapted in this case to pre-existing Ukrainian equipment. So, yeah, I think that's a significant point to make there. Uh, Going across to Germany, so Zelensky went from uh, Italy to Germany yesterday, doing his rounds. He met the Pope yesterday. He met the Italian premier, and that was all really great. Loads of solidarity there, and then went across to Germany. So already in Berlin, weapons, powerful package, air defense, reconstruction, EU, NATO security, all the things you'd want. Right. Ukrainian scouts will receive 105 Vector drones within the scope of the contract of the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine and the German UAV manufacturing company Quantum Systems, GmbH. This was reported by the main intelligence director of the Defense Ministry of Ukraine. Now, I just want to go over what Germany had previously promised in their biggest package yet. So German aid package that was announced, I announced it yesterday. 20 Marder infantry fighting vehicles, these are decent. 30 Leopard 1 tanks, they're going to be useful. 18 wheeled howitzers, they're the RCH ones, they're really good for shooting scoots. 4 Iris-T SLM air defense systems, 12 Iris-T SLS launchers, hundreds of guided missiles for the system, 200 reconnaissance drones, and 100 protected combat vehicles, and more than 100 logistics support vehicles. So that's 200 extra vehicles, 100 of them being support vehicles. Super important, those logistical support vehicles, 100 being MRAPs by the sounds of it. I presume that would be mine resistant armored ambush protection vehicles, sorry. But it could be APCs as well, don't know. And that is fantastic. So he has gone over there and kind of making sure these kinds of deals are done. But I think it's interesting afterwards that you've had this announcement from the former Danish prime minister and the head of the Ukrainian presidential office, Ukrainian head of presidential office, and of the former prime minister of Denmark. I think there's two people. I think. Oh yes, sorry. Ukrainian head of presidential office and the former prime minister of Denmark write in a joint article, Germany has not always received the recognition it deserves. The truth is, from Leopard 2 tanks to Patriot and Iris-T missiles, German arms shipments have made a real difference. Yes, so here is my official props to Germany. They do, at the beginning of the war, they were getting a right hard time. But actually, now they are one of the most significant supporters of weaponry, one of the biggest supporters of Ukraine in terms of weaponry and aid. So that's huge. Now, this came up in my thread in a conversation yesterday. Someone, I'm not quite sure whether they're trollish or whether they're genuinely American, but sort of annoyed about the amount of money that America is spending on support for Ukraine, and then saying, is actually admitted he was repeating the Trump figures given in the CNN town hall that was all really controversial, where Trump said we're given 170 billion, Europe had given 20 billion or whatever it was. That was fact check, and it's a bit problematic. Now, it's really important to understand that figures can be cut up in lots of different ways. I've already explained how when countries like America give headline figures, that those figures are nuanced, right? That they are very likely replacement costs, and you aren't always replacing those things. It's drawdown equipment, but also if you are replacing them, are you giving the correct figure for actually how much you buy them for, and also all of that. Most of the procurement of that equipment is from indigenously, particularly in America, where they have such a massive arms industry. They're buying that from themselves, so that money isn't like money going from here to Ukraine and being thrown at Ukraine. It is money being spent within the US, and then you get the tax revenue, and you get stimulation to the economy, and you get jobs, etc., etc. But again, and I've said this many times before, again, it's important to know what this is as a percentage of GDP. So when you've got the US, whether you like it or not, the US is the biggest economy in the world, richest economy, etc., etc., etc. When you say, oh, the US is given so much more than everyone else, they are that much bigger than everyone else, right? And they have a defense industry that is behemoth, like just huge. So when you it's like saying, well, this guy gave only £100 to this charity, and then this person next door gave £10,000. This guy's he's way giving way more. This guy that gave £10,000, Mr. B, Mr. A only gave £100. £10,000. What a legend! Turns out that Mr. A has only got like £500 disposable income. Mr. B's a millionaire. Right, so Mr. B's a millionaire, gives 10,000 as a percentage of his disposable income. Actually, is not as generous. Mr. B is not as generous as Mr. A. He is in real terms. Now, when you look at real terms is super important because Ukraine would be screwed without the actual stuff that America has given. In real terms, America has given the most stuff, but as a percentage of what they are able to give, as a percentage of what they generate as an economy, which is your GDP, it is not the top, right? And therefore, it's seeing this from both sides. It is super amazing. The stuff America's done is super amazing, and without it, Ukraine would be screwed. But there are different ways to skin a cat, right? So here is the total bilateral aid commitments to Ukraine as a percentage of donor gross domestic product GDP between January 24th, 2022 and February 24th, 2023 by country. So this is pretty much most of the war. Okay, it's maybe 3 months old now, so it might have changed a little bit. But Latvia, 1.24% of GDP, Estonia, 1.1%, Lithuania, 0.93%, Norway, 0.7%, Poland, 0.64%, Netherlands, 0.46%, Czechia, 0.41%, UK, 0.38%, Bulgaria, 0.37%, and then the US at 0.37% as well. So when you're looking at the stats, have some kind of more nuanced understanding of what people are doing and how generous they're being. If you look at the Kiel Institute, this is really good. Ukraine support tracker, really good. Again, like this map will tell you that actually there are countries that are far and above what the US do in terms of a percentage of their GDP. But there are different ways of looking at this. So there we have the same sort of statistics there. All of these countries above the US as a percentage of GDP, so on and so forth. Different types of aid. But as you can see, US here, government support to Ukraine, different types. So you've got military, humanitarian, and financial. You've got EU institutions there. And then you got the UK, Germany. So EU institutions is outside of the EU countries, but the EU countries give towards that. So actually, it's worth having a nuanced understanding of that as well. By point of fact that it looks like Germany may well have given less than the UK in terms of aid to Ukraine. But actually, when you understand that Germany stumps up something like, I don't know, quarter of the EU budget, then it's more than the UK. So that is worth understanding that. But you can see the US is ahead. So government spending to Ukraine by country group in terms of billions, just real terms, that's 71 billion there. EU countries and institutions, 61.9 billion. But then, you've got 500 million people in that country. 500 million people there, 300 and whatever it is million in the US. But the US has just got a much bigger economy. Although the EU is a massive trading bloc, of course, but there just is complex, right? There's loads of different ways of adding this up, and it is too simplistic to just go, "Oh, the US are carrying this; they're giving everything, and these guys aren't giving enough." It's like, actually, yes, you are giving loads of stuff, but in terms of what the percentage of what you are worth, if you like, you're in the mix, right? And there are other countries that are giving kind of scare quotes more. So just worth understanding that. I'm not belittling America's contribution. I'm just trying to be accurate in how we understand this and say, on the one hand, yeah, absolutely phenomenal. On the other hand, there are other countries that give more in terms of what their capabilities are. When you've got someone like Denmark giving literally all of their their I don't know, self-propelled howitzer capabilities or whatever it is. There are certain countries that are just giving like pretty much everything they can in certain areas. Now, if the US did that, they could literally give 6,000 tanks or whatever it is. The point is there's a huge difference between these countries and how we assess and evaluate their donations. Belarusian media, Lukashenko has been taken to hospital. So we're on to geopolitics amid rumors of poor health. He just visited Russia for Victory Day. He has been uh, walking a fine line, a bit like Erdogan, in terms of how much he supports Russia and how much he doesn't get involved directly in the war. Right, Kremlin want him to get Putin wants him to get directly involved. He doesn't want to so much, but he's been threatened. He's been threatened previously. His foreign minister was assassinated by Russia recently. I mean, that happened. So he knows that he's walking on thin ice. Well, he's now been taken ill just after getting back um, from Moscow. So Belarusian dictator Alexander Lukashenko checked into a hospital near Minsk around 7 p.m., reported watchdog Belarusian Hajun. The roads and access to the hospital were closed off and guarded. Um, uh, so there you go. I don't know what's happened there. It's someone else saying he looks like he's just passed away. I don't think that's actually the case. But yeah, it would be really interesting if that is as a result of Russian shenanigans. Right, moving on to, I'm sorry to mention Elon Musk again. I know a bunch of you love him, but we've got uh, elections coming up in Turkey, and these could be super important for positioning with regard to NATO and Russia in terms of Erdogan being essentially a kind of almost dictator or an autocratic ruler who has been in charge for a long time and has been trying to funnel Russian money in on the one hand and then provide Ukraine with arms on the other. So there's a really complex relationship that Turkey has with Russia. And these elections are going to be super, super important. Well, it turns out that Elon Musk, so he said at the beginning of the war, Starlink that he owns has been told by some governments, not Ukraine, to block Russian news sources. We will not do so unless at gunpoint. Sorry to be a free speech absolutist. So he claimed at the beginning of the war, I'm a free speech absolutist. I will not shut down certain news sources, certain information sources from Russia. I'm free speech. You might not like what TASS have to say, but I'm not going to. And RT and all these propagandists, like really horrible genocidal propagandists, right? I'm not going to shut them down. And then this week he has said that basically he is shutting down. So this is what happened. So too clever by half, Elon Musk just gave away the store by making clear that he prioritizes Twitter's presence in a country over the platform's free speech principles. He has invited endless censorship demands to gain compliance. Governments will just threaten to expel Twitter. So the Turkish government asked Twitter to censor its opponents right before an election, and Elon Musk complied. And he said it should generate some interest in Twitter files reporting. So the idea that social media organizations in the States are leftist and they kowtow to leftist demands. Actually, Elon Musk denied leftist demands or just, centrist demands of like, hey, maybe you should censor some of what the Russian propagandists, genocidal propagandists are saying because it's despicable. He's like, no, I'm not going to do that. And then Erdogan comes along and says, if you don't censor what my opposition is saying, I'm going to kick you out of Turkey. And he goes, oh, of course, I'll do that then. Where's your free speech absolutism? Okay, it doesn't exist. Why are you kowtowing to Erdogan? And it seems like he's positioning himself to be pro-Russian here. I'm not going to censor Russian sources, and I am going to censor opposition Turkish sources to allow Erdogan to still remain in charge. But he says, like, in response to this, Elon Musk said, "Did your brain fall out of your head?" Iglesias, who said this. The choice is to have Twitter throttled in its entirety. No, this is in Turkey. Or limit access to some tweets. Which one do you want? So he said, I am making a choice to limit access to tweets. So I'm happy to censor. So all of you people who love Elon Musk but hate censorship, Elon Musk has just advocated for censorship, but didn't advocate for censorship with regard to Russia, but does for Turkish opposition. This is really problematic, and starting to get some details on who Twitter is blocking inside of Turkey, and it's not good, says Simon Rosenberg. Twitter succumbs to Erdogan's pressure, silences key voices on the election. On the election eve. So this is not good, right? Now, I love Jimmy Wales says to this. So Jimmy Wales, if you don't know, is the founder of Wikipedia. What Wikipedia did, so he's answering Elon Musk here, who said, "Did your brain fall out of your head? Of course, we're going to censor." And what Wikipedia did is we stood strong for our principles and fought to the Supreme Court of Turkey and won. So they've been in exactly the same situation, and they stood up for freedom of speech and took them to court and won. This is what it means to treat freedom of expression as a principle rather than a slogan, just to get your followers on Twitter yourself, just to sound like you are what so many of these free speech absolutists, want you to be. But it's just a slogan, because actually you don't really follow that. If you really were a free speech absolutist, you would not be doing what you're doing in Turkey. Anyway, I just thought that was interesting, and it does have relevance to Ukraine as well. Okay, and the last thing I'm going to say is Financial Times has reported that the G7, the group of seven most powerful countries in the world, and the EU to ban Russian gas import resumption. So the G7 and the EU plan to ban Russian gas imports on routes where Moscow has cut supplies before, according to a document seen by the FT. The move aims to prevent the restart of Russian pipeline gas exports on routes to countries such as Poland and Germany, where Moscow triggered an energy crisis after cutting off supplies in 2022. So this would be a sensible thing to do going forward in terms of curtailing Russian energy exports. So there you go. That's the news for today. Hope that's useful and interesting. Please like, subscribe, and share. Thank you so much for choosing to hang out here. Really appreciate it. You guys are wonderful. Take care, and I'll speak to you soon. Oh, I have to say, it's a big day. Like, it's the end of the season. One of my twins plays rugby, and it's his end of the 12-year-old. Not that makes any difference, but he's got the end of the season rugby thing, which is kind of an all-day thing. So I might not be able to do as many videos today, but we'll see. Anyway, toodle pips.